Welcome to another Age of Sigmar battle report, Stormcast Eternals versus the putrid forces of Nurgle. Border War. Two armies approach the same battlefield, determined to capture the vital ground that separates their territories and, if possible, strike deep into enemy territory. There are 4 objectives on the battlefield for Border War. You can see there are 2 on the centre line, and controlling one of those at the end of your turn is worth 2 victory points. Controlling the one objective in your own half, in the centre, is worth 1, and controlling the objective in your opponent's half, in the centre, is worth 4 victory points collected at the end of your turn. So, let's go through the forces, shall we? There you see a nice view of the centre, with a little ruinous area there with the various terrain pieces around it. Here we have the forces of the Stormcast. We have 5 Judicators, backed up by the Knight Venator. Next to them, guarding the base objective for the Stormcast Eternals, we have 5 Liberators. Then slightly further along we have the Knight Azeros and the Lord Veritant with his faithful purple Gryph-hound servant, next to the Realm Gate there. And onto the forces of Chaos. There are actually more Stormcast Eternals, but we'll see those in a moment. They've started off in the heavens. So, we have 5 Blight Kings, who are very, very tough customers indeed. Moving on, we have Orgot's Demon Spew, who is a Magath Lord. Moving on, we have 5 more Blight Kings, and 20 Plague Bearers backed up by a wizard there. So, in the Celestial Realm we have 3 Prosecutors, 5 Retributors, and 3 Etherwings, who are going to be dropping in and assisting later on in the battle. And here you can see the roll-off for the first turn, which has gone the way of Nurgle, with their kind of green swirly dice there, quite appropriate I think for Nurgle. Turn 1. And of course the forces of Nurgle, who are quite slow, are going to be advancing up all the way, most of them running but not very far. Not very good run rolls here, and various buffs have been distributed around just in case they manage to fight before their next hero phase. So these Blight Kings, when they roll a 6 to hit, it does a mortal wound. And there is the leader there, Mr. Orgot's Demon Spew, moving right into the centre towards the base objective of the Stormcast. And these Blight Kings, these are over on my left. These guys will be re-rolling wounds should they get into combat soon. But, as you can see from the layout of the battlefield there, the Stormcast Eternals aren't entirely concerned with that left-hand objective. I've got all my shooting units, really, down on this side. And my plan is, because the Nurgle forces do not have that many units on their side, then they're going to have to spend quite a bit of time around the objectives, and they don't really have much in the way of shooting, if anything. So if I stay away from the objectives at certain points, that should draw them all forwards, and I will then be free to drop in my units that are currently in the heavens behind enemy lines and possibly take the opponent base objective there, which would be worth a lot of points at the end of the turn. And if the Nurgle forces decide to leave someone back, then that is a large investment that they're not advancing with, because they do not have many units at all, and they all need to be fighting, really, to be doing their job. Especially Blight Kings, they are incredibly powerful when they get into combat. If they stand off, they are likely to get shot. Turn 1 for the Stormcast, and you can see that the Knight Azeros has actually flown up to claim this objective here. The Nurgle forces weren't able to claim any of the objectives in the first turn, not even their own base objective, because they had to advance beyond it, because they really want to get into the Stormcast faces. And the Gryph-hound is just hanging around there as well, ready to strike at the enemy when required. In the centre, the Judicators and the Knight Venator have actually backed away a little bit, in case the large Magath Lord decides he wants to charge towards them, make it slightly more difficult, and hopefully he'll have to engage the Liberators instead. And the Etherwings have dropped down behind enemy lines, along with the Prosecutors. So they're going to be flying around causing all sorts of havoc. I didn't want to bring the Retributors down yet, because I don't want the Retributors to be charged. I want the Retributors to be the ones doing the charging. So, if I were to bring them down now, then there are still enemies quite close to the edge of the battlefield for the enemy, so they would be able to move backwards and engage them. I want the Retributors to be charging in because they're so potent in combat, especially if they're against Blight Kings, though. Whoever strikes the first hit has quite a decent advantage there. So I want that to be my Retributors, and I can pick and choose when they enter the battlefield. So not yet. You can see a wide view there, and the Blight Kings on the left are struggling to get into the game. No one's going out to engage them, and they may end up getting stuck on that objective on the left there. If they choose to stay there, they could push straight past it into the Stormcast lines and go for my base objective, but we'll see. The large unit of Plague Bearers, I'm going to be ignoring them, mostly, because I'm not going to be able to inflict that many wounds and kill them all. So, as soon as they get to the objective on the right, it's pretty much sacrificed to them. The Knight Venator and the Judicators combine to put 4 wounds, actually, onto Mr. Demon Spew. So he's been whittled down a bit already, which is nice. And he's going to want to engage them as soon as possible to stop the shooting barrage. The Prosecutors with their hammers, which are fairly reliable. I think they only do 1 wound here. I think when I was marking the wounds, then I was showing how many wounds remain, and possibly when Mr. Stew, my opponent, was marking it, he was doing it with how many wounds they've taken, I think. So it might get confusing at some point, but I'll try to clarify. So I think that's just 1 wound there done to the Blight Kings in the centre. And the Liberators are hanging around my base objectives, so they're going to be scoring a point for that, just 1. And the Knight of Zeros is going to be scoring 2 points for that one. And he's really just holding that until the Plague Bearers get too close, and then he's going to run away, probably, because he doesn't want to fight them. So, after the first battle round, the Stormcast Eternals are in the lead, 3 points to 0. And for the next round, Nurgle win the roll-off again, and they choose to go first. Here we go then, turn 2 for Nurgle. So, Mr. Demon Spew is going to be moving forwards, but before he does that, he's going to use his command ability to reroll wounds on that unit of Blight Kings there, should they get into combat. And the other unit of Blight Kings have moved up onto that objective along the centre line there, so that's going to be worth 2 victory points at the end of every turn they hold it, and I don't plan on heading out there to contest that, because it would be a suicide mission. So if anything, I'll probably resort to just shooting them and go for the other objectives. The other Blight Kings, though, have turned round because they realise that there is a huge amount of points at stake in their own base objective, and they can't abandon it, knowing that the Retributors are still able to come down as well. So they're moving to threaten the Prosecutors and the Ether Wings that are at the back there. The Plague Bearers do not get a very successful run, and that's 2 turns in a row when they've been quite slow now, and you can see it does not move them within range of the objective there, so the Knight Zeros is still claiming it. He will be in my next turn anyway. Now, Mr. Demon Spew, he only needed a charge of about 5 inches to make it to the Judicators, but he couldn't roll that. He only rolled 4, I think, so he has to choose to go into the Liberators instead, which is not ideal. He wanted to take down my shooting threat, but he's not able to do that, so he's just going to have to fight the slightly tougher to kill Liberators instead. And look at that, he only manages to kill one of them. Another one has a wound as well, but quite a poor attempt there. Now I had to choose carefully which models to remove here, because I had to make sure that he wasn't going to end up with a controlling stake in that objective there, even though he's only got 1 model there. Had he killed more, of course, it would have been a bigger deal, as in the end it didn't really matter, but it would have mattered if I'd been creating too much of a gap as well, because you can't do that in Age of Sigmar anymore. You can't leave just huge gaps in your units when you're removing models, so you have to consider very carefully where you're placing each one. If more of them die, it will come up later that I'll have to make a choice on who's going to die, because you can see the leader is actually on the left there, and he's the furthest from the objective, so we'll see. The Liberators actually do a wound back to him as well, which is nice. I think that knocks him down a power threshold as well. You can see these Blight Kings are just chilling out on an objective, and they're going to be sitting there for a little while. These are the ones at the back. So they don't want to abandon it to chase my units around, because should they do so, I'll just be able to jump on it and claim those 4 juicy victory points. They're going to have to guard it, but he's going to score 1 point for that, and 2 points for the one on the left with the other Blight Kings, so 3 points there. So it's even at the moment, but Nurgle did miss out on scoring in turn 1. Turn 2 for the Stormcast Eternals, and the Gryph-hound is just staying within range to hold this objective here because the Knight of Zeros has got other ideas. He's flown away. And he's flown to look at the wizard, who hasn't done much successfully so far. Then the Lord Veritant is quite handy at dispelling, so he's been able to put a stop to the spells that have been going off to this point, which is why I haven't said anything about them. So he wants to try and charge that wizard momentarily. And the Judicators they've moved away a little bit further, I think, from Mr. Demon Spew, not too far. And the Knight Venator has moved away to the left there. And the Retributors have come down. So when they drop down, of course they need a 9-inch charge to reach the enemy because they have to be 9 inches away when they come down from the Celestial Realm. So on average they won't actually succeed with their charge as soon as they drop in. But you never know. You've got to take the chance. The Prosecutors have moved a bit away from the Blight Kings as well, and I'm fairly confident they're not going to charge out of that spot because I've got 3 units there, and all it takes is one of them to jump on that objective there, and that would be a huge amount of points to me, especially now because there's a chance at some point that I could get 2 turns in a row as well. So yeah, if he stays there forever, I'm going to have trouble shifting him. And if I charge units in there, they're likely to get killed. So it's a solid defence he's got going on at this stage. But you don't want to leave objectives abandoned, especially in Age of Sigmar, where there's a possibility of your opponent getting 2 turns in a row when the objectives are scored at the end of the turn rather than the battle round. So the Prosecutors and the bird from the Knight Venator actually managed to take down a Blight King, and these are the Blight Kings on the left who are currently unopposed. And the Judicators, they put a few more wounds onto Mr. Demon Spew, the Magath Lord himself, and he's down to 3 wounds now, so he's not looking healthy at all. I'll be hoping to finish him off very soon. And then the Liberators take another one, so he's down to 2. The token behind the Liberators, I believe, means they're not going to be taking Battle Shock, which is the command ability I've been using. Or in fact, it's not a command ability, it's a prayer from the Lord Veritant, a prayer that I gave him. And then Mr. Demon Spew kills a couple of Liberators, so there's only 2 left, and this is the point where I had to decide which ones to remove, because I wanted to have 2 of them within 3 inches of the objective, so that I could still score the single victory point for it. So I had to actually remove the leader of the unit. So Sloppy there should have put the leader as the closest model to the objective. And that's how it looks at the end of that combat. So the Gryph-hound is holding that one. That's going to be worth 2. So Stormcast again pick up 3. So still in the lead now. And are Nurgle going to pay for not scoring anything in turn 1? We shall see. And look at this, we're going to get Stormcast with 2 turns in a row now, because, that's right, I finally won the first turn of the battle round roll-off. So turn 3 for the Stormcast. So that means the Gryph-hound on his own is going to be able to hold that objective for another turn, which is a nice bonus. The Knight of Zeros, by the way, in the previous turn didn't succeed with his charge into the wizard, so now he's going to get another go from really close, and he's going to be joined by the Aetherwings as well. And over on this side, the Retributors are also going to have the opportunity to charge into the Blight Kings without the possibility of them charging back. Because coming in 9 inches away, on average you're not going to succeed, so getting the first turn after that is quite a big deal, since they didn't succeed with their charge last turn. Now they've got a chance to get 4 inches closer and have another go. And the Prosecutors can move further away as well. And pepper the Blight Kings, no doubt, with hammers. So the Lord Veritant has decided that because that big beastie, Mr. Demon Spew, the pride of the Nurgle force, is almost dead, and I was looking at the Lord Veritant's stats, and he's actually pretty handy in combat, so I thought, let's try and charge him in there, just in case I don't kill it with shooting, because I need that thing to be dead. And you can see over there, the Blight Kings on the objective, I'm not engaging them at all, because it would be suicidal. I'm just going to be shooting them. So the Judicators actually kill Mr. Orgot's Demon Spew. You can see him fallen from his mount there, and he is gone. So that's nice. Then the Retributors do make it into combat with the Blight Kings, and they actually kill 2 of them. So I think one of them already had a wound, but they did quite a hefty number of wounds. The Retributors, of course, when they roll a 6 to hit, they dish out mortal wounds, and I got a few 6s there. So that is why 2 Blight Kings dead, which is really important. Blight Kings, they're tough to take down, and they put out a massed amount of damage. So it's always an interesting duel when these 2 units come up against each other. I would say the Blight Kings have the slight edge because they have a lot of wounds. Both of them can deal out the damage, but getting the first hit in and killing 2 of them could be crucial there. The Knight Azeros and the Etherwings aren't going to be able to kill the Wizard immediately. They don't get a very good round of attacks in. So he is wounded though. And one of the Retributors goes down to the Blight Kings there. But, as you will see in a second, you can see that the Wizard doesn't die. Now, the Gryph-hound has this objective. 2 turns in a row he's just been sat on there now, because of the double turn for the Stormcast. So the Gryph-hound on his own has just accrued 4 victory points during that time. These 2 Liberators, after the large beastie was finished off, they are claiming my base objective, which is worth another one. And look at this. The Retributors, 4 of them have managed to get to within 3 inches of the enemy base objective. And with the 2 Blight Kings that they massacred, they just knocked their heads off with the hammers. That means that the Stormcast are controlling the enemy base objective, which is worth 4 points, which is a huge deal. If 1 more Retributor had gone down, that would be 4 less points now. But as it stands, look at that, 7 points in turn 3 for the Stormcast. So that could be a big deal there. That double turn could have made that lead unassailable, but we shall see. Turn 3 for Nurgle. So, the Wizard, still able to use his foul magics, of course, and look at this. He summons the endless spell, the Aethervoid Pendulum, which I may have forgotten to mention earlier that he took, and it killed an Etherwing on its way through, and it also wounded the Knight Azeros, took 3 wounds off him. So he's not got much health left, but that's better than it could have been, I suppose. Then you can see the Plague Bearers, all 20 of them, finally make their way to that objective, and if they get the successful charge into the Gryph-hound, they're going to eat him for breakfast. But he's more than paid for himself now. And there you can see the Gryph-hound is getting charged, so he's going to die. He did his job though. So the Blight Kings kill another Retributor. You can see how close they are to that Aethervoid Pendulum. Very perilously positioned there. And the Gryph-hound has a go, but I don't think he kills anything. But the Knight Azeros does kill the Wizard there, so that's nice. And the Gryph-hound valiantly went down. The Retributors put some more wounds onto the Blight Kings, but they don't kill anymore. So, the Nurgle forces are going to control both of the central objectives on the centre line, should I say. So, with the Blight Kings on that side and the Plague Bearers on the right. So that's going to be 4 points there. So, they're putting in a good effort. They're building up quite a few points as well. And then, look at this. We both roll a 1, which means in the second edition of Age of Sigmar that whoever had the first go in the last round now gets the choice. So we looked at the endless spell rules to see exactly how the movement for that works, and of course the Stormcast had the choice of going first or second here, and whoever goes second has the advantage of moving the endless spell. So I chose to go second so I could then move the endless spell through the Blight Kings, and look what it does, it just completely obliterates them. There's only 1 left now. So that endless spell kind of backfiring on the Nurgle forces there. And here we go into the turn for the Nurgle now, because I sacrificed the ability to go next just to do that, basically, which I think was worth it, because if I hadn't done that, then the endless spell would have been able to plough into the Retributors instead and maybe completely change the course of the game. So, the Plague Bearers at this stage are just moving as fast as they can while still holding that objective. They're moving towards the Stormcast base objective and trying to make a long charge towards it. So it's worth a go, because if you're going to abandon that objective, you need it to be for a good reason. You don't want to be caught in no man's land not scoring for a turn. And in the combat phase, the final Blight King actually goes down there to the Retributors. So it's not looking healthy over there for Nurgle at all. They don't really have anything to stop this happening either. But at the end of the Nurgle turn, 4 points again for those 2 centerline objectives. Turn 4 for the Stormcast. And the Liberators have moved back a little bit to make the charge more difficult from the Plague Bearers, still staying within range to claim a point for that, and the Lord Veritan is hanging out with them as well. Then the 2 Retributors are just chilling out as well around that objective. And then this little shooting battery here of the Judicators and the Knight Venator, they take aim and take down a few Plague Bearers, but there's no way I'm going to kill that unit before the end of the game. So the Stormcast have pretty good board control here, and it's not looking good for Nurgle because they just don't have enough units to sit on enough of the objectives at this stage. They've only got the Blight Kings on the left, the Plague Bearers on the right, and I think that's everything. So unless they get a very favourable go with the Endless spell, it's not looking good at all, because the Stormcast have got 4 units in the enemy half who are free to hop around. 3 of them are flying units as well that are very fast and able to leap between objectives. So you would think with a little bit of evasion, the Stormcast should have this in the bag now. And the Stormcast indeed picked up 5 points in that round. You can see for the enemy base objective and for my own base objective, worth a total of 5. And heading into the next battle round, Stormcast win the roll off again. However, the Stormcast are going to elect to let the forces of Nurgle go first again, so that the Endless spell can be moved by me and it's just sent away. Then the Plague Bearers, because we're now into the turn 5, but we forgot to turn the dice over there. It is actually the 5th battle round now. The Plague Bearers are going to attempt to charge again onto the Stormcast base objective, and the Blight Kings are going to stay on that one and score points. They're so slow, all of the Nurgle units, that you might think, well, why don't they just abandon that objective now and try and charge somebody? But at this stage in the game, I think it's too late for that. I think if the Blight Kings were going to do that, it had to be much, much earlier. The Plague Bearers do succeed with the charge this time, though, into the Liberators. Not a lot of them can get into range to fight just yet, though, but they are going to control the enemy base objective. But is it too little too late? Probably. They kill a Liberator, the Lord Veritan ends up in the fight as well, and a couple of them go down. These Blight Kings are just sitting there scoring points. And they do actually get 6 points in the 5th battle round, but it's not really going to be enough, because the Stormcast can just quite happily... Well, the Veritan and the Liberator are going to keep swinging, but up here the Knight of Zeros moves into the centerline objective over there, and the Retributors are still just amassed around the Nurgle base objective. So there's how it's going to look at the end. The Stormcast with a comfortable lead going into the end of the game, and the Nurgle are not able to catch up. That big lead that was built up from getting the first turn in the 3rd battle round, getting the 2 in a row there, that turned out to be quite a big deal. And you can see the final score, Stormcast 24 victory points, Nurgle 17. So a high scoring game, but the Stormcast always with a somewhat comfortable lead, especially in that transition between the 2nd and 3rd battle rounds. That was quite big. So if we go back to how the battlefield looks there, you can see with the units that Nurgle had at their disposal, really they had the 3 fighting units, the big demon spew and a wizard. So really only 4 units that are any good at holding an objective, because obviously the wizard isn't much use, especially against this Stormcast list that has quite a lot of mobility and units that can really beat up a wizard in close combat. Even the Etherwings can be very annoying to him, and there's 3 of them, so they would prevent him from holding an objective. The Knight of Zeros as well, big threat to wizards. The Nurgle just kind of lacked a bit of mobility and didn't make an attempt to use the Realm Gate as an option. It was a possibility of doing something with the Realm Gates, the way they're positioned, 1 in each corner there, should they need to send their troops to the other side, but he didn't. He decided not to put his wizard near the Realm Gate, so he was never going to be able to use it, really. and the lack of mobility caught up with them definitely. The Blight Kings on the left didn't really do enough during the game. Alright, they scored points, but just scoring points against that many Stormcast units was never going to succeed in the end, I think, and possibly they could have been pushing in earlier onto the Stormcast base objective, and they could even maybe heading backwards, you never know, because there were units to fight there. They could have succeeded with a long charge. The Prosecutors were staying kind of at arm's reach though, so it wasn't that likely that they would have succeeded with a charge. Overall, very, very difficult. For this game, we had 2 lists each, and we randomised which one we used, and then we used the other list for the game that will be coming up next, which is a different scenario. So you'll see whether that one's more favourable to the Nurgle forces. But I think the 2 units of Blight Kings, they're very, very tough. They can dish out serious punishment, but they're very slow, and you don't want them sitting around on objectives when they could be fighting, really. When they're your main fighting force, you can't really afford for them to be doing that. The Stormcast had a lot more units that were quite happy to sit on objectives and not advance on the fight. So there was an advantage there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this battle. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you've got any tactical tips for the Stormcast or the Nurgle forces here, and you can look forward to seeing the follow-up game, which will be coming very, very soon, with 2 different lists and a different scenario as well. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to like the video, of course, and if you're that way inclined, don't forget to send me all of your money so that I can continue to make these beautiful, in-depth, high-quality videos. All that remains to be said, I think, is good night out there, whatever you are.